Imagine a thriving coral reef full of colorful fish suddenly turning ghostly white, or a lush forest reduced to ash and charred stumps in just days. These dramatic transformations aren't rare. Ecosystems around the world are constantly changing, and these changes ripple through entire populations of organisms. Welcome to Sciesmic. I'm Matt, and today we're exploring one of ecology's most important concepts: how changes in ecosystems affect the populations living within them. Some changes happen slowly over decades, while others strike in just moments. Some changes come from nature, others from human activities, but all ecosystem changes have one thing in common: they affect the organisms living there, sometimes in dramatic and unexpected ways. Let's discover how ecosystems respond to change. Physical changes alter the non-living components of ecosystems, things like temperature, water availability, soil conditions, and habitat structure. These changes can have huge effects on every population in the ecosystem. Climate changes, especially droughts, demonstrate how water availability affects populations. When rivers dry up, fish populations crash because they have nowhere to swim. Plants wilt and die, affecting herbivores that depend on them. Predators lose their prey. A single physical change cascades through the entire food web. Temperature shifts force populations to adapt, migrate, or decline. As oceans warm, fish populations move toward cooler waters near the poles, like the North and South. Cold-adapted species like polar bears lose their sea ice habitat and struggle to find food. Wildfires dramatically transform habitats in just a few hours. They destroy shelter, eliminate food sources, and kill organisms that can't escape. But fire also creates opportunities. Some plant seeds only germinate after fire, and certain species actually depend on these periodic burns. Flooding can reshape entire landscapes, depositing sediment, changing river courses, and creating brand new wetlands. Some populations benefit from these floods, like fish who gain access to new breeding grounds, while others lose critical habitats. Soil changes affect plant populations, which then affect everything else. Erosion removes topsoil needed for plant growth. Soil compaction prevents root penetration. These physical changes reduce plant populations a lot, which impacts all the other organisms that are depending on these plants. Now, not all physical changes are disasters. I know it seems that way at first. Seasonal changes are natural physical variations that populations have adapted to over time. But when seasonal patterns shift due to climate change, populations can't always adapt quickly enough. Biological changes involve living components of ecosystems. New species may be arriving or leaving, existing species just straight up disappear, or disease outbreaks or populations even explode. These changes directly affect how organisms interact. When new predators arrive, prey populations that evolved without them often crash dramatically. For example, brown tree snakes accidentally were introduced to Guam, which eliminated most of the island's native bird species because the birds had no natural defenses against this new predator. Invasive species can outcompete native populations for resources. When zebra mussels invaded the Great Lakes, they filtered so much plankton from the water that they starved native filter-feeding fish and changed the entire aquatic food web. Disease outbreaks represent biological changes that can also devastate populations. White nose syndrome, a fungal disease, has killed millions of bats across North America. There's even special types of fungus that have driven many amphibian species to extinction worldwide. When key species disappear, the effects cascade throughout entire ecosystems. Sea otters nearly went extinct from hunting, which caused sea urchin populations to explode, which then destroyed kelp forests, which eliminated habitat for hundreds of other species. You see how one little thing can impact so many? The decline of pollinators, like bees for example, represents a biological change affecting plant populations. Without adequate pollination, plant reproduction fails, which then affects seed-eating animals, which affects their predators, and one biological change ripples onward and outward. Sometimes population explosions represent biological changes. When excess nutrients enter water systems, algae populations boom, creating dead zones where other organisms can't survive. The biological change of one population, in this case algae, creates a physical change, or in this case low oxygen, affecting all the others in that ecosystem. The speed of ecosystem changes dramatically affects how populations respond. Gradual changes may allow for adaptation to occur, while sudden changes can cause entire collapses. Gradual changes happen over years or decades, As climate slowly warms, some species can gradually shift their ranges northward or to, higher elevations. Trees slowly colonize new areas, animals gradually adjust breeding timing, and populations have time to adapt through natural selection. Sudden changes strike fast. Think hurricanes, floods, fires, or disease outbreaks like COVID-19. Populations have no time to adapt. Organisms either survive the immediate impact or they don't. Recovery depends on whether enough individuals survive to rebuild populations. The same change may affect different populations differently. A wildfire might devastate tree populations, but benefit grass populations that quickly colonize the freshly burnt areas. Deer populations might temporarily decline, but then boom because now they have more grass to feed on. Sometimes gradual changes accumulate until reaching a tipping point where sudden collapse occurs. A lake might absorb pollution for years and years with minimal visible side effects, then suddenly experience a massive fish die-off when algae blooms deplete oxygen. Multiple changes happening simultaneously can have multiplicative effects. A drought weakens trees, making them vulnerable to beetle infestations, then wildfire spreads more easily through dead trees. Each change alone might be survivable, but combined, absolutely devastating. Past changes can have long-lasting effects. Even after a forest regrows following logging, the ecosystem may never fully return to its original state. Some species may not return, soil may remain degraded, and the new ecosystem functions differently than it had before. Now, not all ecosystem changes lead to permanent damage. Many ecosystems show remarkable resilience, the ability to recover and bounce back after a disturbance. Understanding resilience helps us predict which populations will actually bounce back. Ecological succession describes how ecosystems recover. After a fire, pioneer species like grasses and wildflowers quickly colonize. Then shrubs establish, and eventually trees return, and the forest gradually rebuilds and grows. Different populations dominate at these different recovery stages. Ultimately, recovery depends on survivors. Seeds buried in soil may survive a fire. Animals that fled the area may return back. Fish surviving in deeper water can repopulate once conditions have improved. These survivors become the foundation for population recovery. Ecosystems with higher biodiversity tend to show greater resilience. If one species fails, others can fill in that ecological role. It's like having backup systems. The more species present, the more likely the ecosystem can maintain function despite those changes. Resistance means to avoid change in the first place, like drought-resistant plants surviving dry periods without any kind of population decline. Resilience means bouncing back quickly after change occurs. Both properties help ecosystems cope with varying levels of disturbances. But resilience has its limits. Sometimes changes are so severe or long-lasting that ecosystems can't recover to their previous state. They may stabilize in a new configuration with different dominant species, what ecologists call an alternative stable state. Human intervention can sometimes aid recovery. Restoration projects like replanting native vegetation, removing invasive species, or reintroducing lost predators to an ecosystem can help out dramatically. For example, Yellowstone's wolf reintroduction helped restore ecosystem balance after decades without this keystone predator. Many modern ecosystem changes result from human activities, and understanding these impacts is crucial for our conservation of our planet. Habitat destruction represents perhaps the most severe physical change humans have caused. When forests are cleared or wetlands are drained, populations lose their homes entirely. Surviving populations may be too small to remain viable long term. Pollution creates both physical and biological changes. Chemical pollutants alter water chemistry and soil conditions, like the physical changes, while also poisoning organisms directly, causing a biological change. Pollution can make habitats unsuitable for sensitive species to survive. Human-caused climate change creates compound effects, like rising temperatures, changing precipitation, more extreme weather events, ocean acidification, and so on. Multiple populations face multiple stresses simultaneously, reducing their ability to adapt. Overharvesting directly removes organisms faster than populations can reproduce. Overfishing collapses fish populations, excessive hunting depletes game animals, and unsustainable logging eliminates forests. These are biological changes caused by human extraction. Now, conservation efforts work to minimize harmful changes and help protect populations. Protected areas like national parks preserve habitats. Fishing quotas allow populations to recover and maintain. Captive breeding programs save endangered species, and controls on pollution help reduce contamination. Now, conservation really does work. Bald eagle populations, for example, recovered after DDT was banned. Gray whale populations rebounded after hunting stopped. Some coral reefs have even shown resilience when stressors are reduced. Understanding how changes affect populations helps us to protect them for years to come. Even individual actions matter, so even if you think you're not making a difference, you really do. Reducing plastic use decreases ocean pollution. Supporting sustainable products reduces habitat destruction. Citizen science helps monitor population changes. So understanding ecosystem changes empowers all of us to make better choices. Ecosystem stability doesn't mean nothing ever changes, though. It means ecosystems can absorb those changes without collapsing. Populations are naturally going to fluctuate. Seasons will change, and occasional disturbances are going to happen. Healthy ecosystems roll with these changes. Understanding how physical and biological changes affect populations is essential for predicting ecosystem futures. It helps us identify which changes are natural and which might cause irreversible damage. Now, you're living in a time of rapid environmental change. Your generation will need to understand these principles to address challenges like climate change, habitat loss, and biodiversity decline. Who knows, maybe you'll become an ecologist studying population responses, a conservation biologist protecting endangered species, or a policymaker creating environmental protections. Every population connects to others through food webs, competition, and habitat sharing. Changes rarely affect just one species. They ripple through entire ecosystems in complex and sometimes surprising ways. Now, don't forget to subscribe for more amazing science videos, and let us know down in the comments, what ecosystem change have you observed in your local area? Thanks for exploring ecosystem dynamics with Sciesmic. Want to explore more about ecosystems and environmental science? Check out our complete science curriculum at sciesmic.com, where every student can learn, grow, and achieve.